Okay, it's a little past 11. It's time to call to order the meeting of the Homelessness Committee. Before we get started, I just want to make a couple of announcements. We've been very lucky at this meeting. We get good participation. We have a room full of people. The room is not designed like an auditorium, so it's very difficult to hear, especially for people in the back. So those who are speaking, I need you to actually yell as much as you can, talk a lot louder than you normally would, so the folks in the back can hear. And if you can position yourself, if it makes sense, to face the back even a little bit, that might be helpful. Along with that, we have a pretty crowded room. We've got pizza in the back, help yourself. But for those who aren't presenting, try to remain as quiet as you can be, so that it doesn't just fill the room with noise, and hopefully we can get through this. We're looking at possibly getting a microphone for future meetings, but we'll see if just talking loud will do it for us today. With that, let's go around with introductions, and we'll start with Mr. Trainer.
Hugh Trainer, Assembly.
Elsie Jackson.
Forrest Dunbar.
Bill Evans.
Patrick Flynn.
Carmen Wenger, the Director of the Anchorage Coalition to End Homelessness.
Jamie Boring, Executive Director of the Anchorage Downtown Park.
Nancy Burke with the Mayor's Office.
And on the phone?
Amy Kimbosky.
And
Kenny Peterson.
And as we normally do, we'd like to go around and see who's joining us today. So, when we start?
Sylvia.
Sylvia?
Hi, Sylvia.
Linda Garrison, Campbell Park Community Council Homeless Committee.
Christopher Constant with, I work at Aquila Fairview Business Association and past president of Fairview Community Council.
Debbie Kelly, Canadian.
Zach Hughes, Alaska Public Media.
Elizabeth Schultz, Community Liaison from the Governor's Office. Hi, good morning. Sue Grogan with United Way of Anchorage. Jane Strait, United Way of Anchorage. Beth Wilson with the Division of Behavioral Health.
Susan Musante with the Division of Behavioral Health.
Doug Lindsay with the Division of Behavioral Health.
Eric Glatt with the American Civil Liberties Union of Alaska.
Lindsay Mills with Providence.
Dick Monsauger, Hospital Administrator at the Providence Alaska Medical Center.
Kim Coble, Deputy Director for Beans Cafe.
Fiona Johnson, Visitor Center.
Jeff Jesse, Mental Health Trust.
Rick Davies, Alaska Residents Foundation.
Carrie Collins, Alaska Health and Management Corporation.
And in the cheap seats. Who do we have?
Dan Gibney, community member.
Lisa Caldera, for the Prince Shelter. Kat Kench, St. Elizabeth Anglican Church.
Lisa Karen Show Effect.
Josh Lewis, Solution Enterprises.
Victoria Becker Lewis, Alaska State Leadership.
Dave Piper, Christian Health Associates, and the Anchorage Coalition and Homelessness.
I'm Kate Toomey. I work with the Alaska Court System, the Mental Health Court.
Brian Wilson, Executive Director of the Alaska Coalition on Housing and Homelessness.
Sherry Sanders Slaven. Rosella Young, Assembly Council's Office. Lord Adams, Community Member.
Looks to be everybody. And if there's anybody back there that has, a real difficulty hearing what's going on, there are seats up front. If you risk being confused for an assembly member. If you don't mind that, feel free to move up. And with that, let's begin the presentations and the fall point in time count update, and take it away. Nancy.
Okay, thank you. I will try to be, I'm trying not to show you that just yet. So I would like to invite Lisa Aquino, she's with us, or Lisa Caldera from Catholic Social Services, and Carmen Wenger is here to present the information that we've provided to the committee in your memo on the count. And I think I'll let Carmen do an introduction for us around the point in time count and set the stage for the update on the outreach count we did on August 31st.
Sure. So there's some information in this in the handouts that you received from Nancy, but the brief background is Anchorage has participated in point in time counts for many years. Several years ago, we did both a winter and a summer count, but only the winter count is required by Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. So for the past number of years, we've only done a winter count, where every other year we do a comprehensive outreach because the numbers are used to recalculate the amount of funding we receive in various programs from HUD. This past winter, we had, it was actually not one of our HUD required reporting years, but we had the opportunity to do a very robust outreach with assistance from the mayor's office. The count is coordinated through the Anchorage Coalition to End Homelessness because we are the, what's called the Continuum of Care collaborative applicant. But with the assistance from the mayor's office, we got a really comprehensive count, and we were able to start using some new methods for how we do that, which has set us up nicely for this coming year, where the numbers will change the amount of funding that our community is eligible for. And because of the focus on single adults in the community right now, and the fact that we haven't been as organized in the past few years to be able to set up the projections going into winter, the decision was made to do a summer or early fall count to see what the difference is, because we know that where people are who are experiencing homelessness fluctuates with the weather, and so summer can often look different than the winter. So the mayor's office helped to coordinate the outreach that was done the last day of August. And Nancy can talk about the specifics that came out of that count.
And I think just to add to it, my role over at the Alaska Mental Health Trust Authority, and as part of the state team, we have a number of our state colleagues here with us today. It's one of the things we felt we wanted to learn, was that we were doing this, we were making a really great effort to count homeless people in the community, but the unknown, it was always who didn't we count, who was still out in the woods, how could we really feel comfortable or more confident with that number. And so by organizing these outreach counts and gridding the community, really canvassing, it helps us feel that the number that we're getting is, we have more confidence in that number. We still know there's probably people we missed on the count day. We learned a lot of things, I think, from doing the count August 31st, as opposed to the last time we did the summer count was 2012. We did it in the end of September after these big winds come through and blow all the leaves off the trees. I do think it would be easier to identify the camp locations. It was easy to miss some if you were not really kind of canvassing and really crawling through the woods, basically. However, it dawned on us yesterday in our outreach meeting. Every Tuesday, the outreach workers are getting together. It dawned on us that we could be using the collector app that the police use to notice camps for our outreach efforts. So we will move that into the next round of outreach. We'll be able to produce exact location maps from the collector app that the CAP team is using. So lots of improvements still to be done. We're getting some momentum on having this be a regular part of our count and helping us have more confidence in the numbers. So with that, I asked Lisa Aquino, Catholic Social Services, and our other partners in the outreach meeting, which includes Anchorage Community Mental Health, Choices, Rural Cap, Beans Cafe, Downtown Soup Kitchen, Catholic Social Services, did I say Anchorage Community Mental Health? All of the big hitters who are the agencies that provide outreach to different sectors of the population are with us every Tuesday. And really to support Catholic Social Services, who's the backbone of the adult homeless system. The shelter is the place where we've been encouraging people to go, along with Beans and Downtown Soup Kitchen. But the shelter really is the one that feels the pinch when we have more people in the community to house or to shelter than we have space for. We've also been in communication with the rescue mission and other partners who are doing part of the work, asking the question, how can we address this winter? How can we have a comprehensive cold weather shelter plan moving into 2016 and 17? And we've collected some ideas in the memo that we presented to you. So I thought we could walk through the demographic information and the survey first, and then I've asked Lisa Aquino to be with us to talk about that cold weather shelter strategy.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I just want to note for the record that we've been joined by Assemblymember Weddleton and Assemblymember Croft.
Okay, so now, the complicated part is that we have two different collection processes melding together. So the chart that's on page 2 of the memo, the summary chart, I apologize, I forgot page numbers on the memo. The chart shows the data collection methods from the point in time count from the 2012 effort that we did. That was our last summer count. That was in mid-September. Then we have the point in time count numbers from January, where we also did the outreach methodology. And then we have a summer count that doesn't include the main point in time numbers, but includes the outreach methodology plus shelters. So really, I caution against us using these as straight comparisons with each other because the methodologies are so different. However, the numbers are beginning to bring us to a place where we will have a reliable baseline, which is what I believe the committee and the mayor and the Homeless Coalition are asking. Let's get a reliable baseline number so we can plan for the needs for the community. Without walking through each of the lines, you've had a chance to review this. Are there questions or are there things we can address about the count?
Mr. Croft?
Just so eventually we'll be able to compare apples to apples. You're going to keep the same methodology in subsequent counts.
Correct. And at this point, that methodology is the point in time count, which includes Project Homeless Connect, counting people who go to social service agencies on that date, the school district, plus the community outreach piece, that's the piece that's been missing. Now, the coalition is in conversation about the Project Homeless Connect event, so that may change a little bit, but it won't change the counts that come out. If we don't do Project Homeless Connect, we will be pursuing other methods of getting outreach and count for those folks.
And for at least a while, we're going to continue the 2 a year, September and January.
Correct. Well, through the current mayor's term, I will offer to head it up, and then we'll be working to have sustainability within the coalition to go forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Flynn?
Yeah, and I think I heard part of the answer here. I was a little surprised the late August count seemed to be down from January. And you mentioned you thought perhaps the presence of foliage was a factor. Do you have any other information or conjecture as to why the numbers were down? Because that was frankly surprising to me.
Agreed. Other than to say, we know that we housed almost 100 people last year. We feel that I feel that the methodology was pretty solid for the August count. Even though there's foliage, I feel we had 120 volunteers going out through the community. There were a few places that we feel we didn't quite get coverage on, but it's a pretty solid number.
So you feel that the fact that we've had more programs to get people housed in place was most likely the contributor to a lower count than expected?
There's a couple of indicators that help me feel more confident about that. I mean, I would have to say my confidence is it's not at the level where I would promote that as the thing, but the sleep-off numbers are down. This count number is looking like it's heading that direction, and other communities like Salt Lake City and Seattle saw those same grouping of indicators move when they started implementing these housing solutions. So I'm not even, that's what it is.
I'm not going to hold you to it.
The numbers are what they are.
Okay, I see someone else wants to jump in.
I would just say, and a lot of this is anecdotal based on experience because we haven't done these counts regularly, but I would say in terms of what we see, we often at Brother Francis Shelter, for example, Lisa Calderas here as well, we often see less people in the summer. And part of that is camping, but maybe part of that is also people are working seasonally and other kinds of things. So I think there's other things happening, and our numbers typically do go down in summer. We've always thought that's largely due to more people camping, and I think that that's true, but also there could be other factors like seasonal work in there. I just don't know that.
Thanks. I don't see any other questions.
The only other thing that I would point out is, the data we're using is self-report. The demographic survey is a self-report survey. So we will be searching for those data points that give us verification of that self-report. For instance, the numbers that I called out in the memo that were of note to me are the people who report their length of homeless being within that chronic homeless range is high according to how it compares to other communities. So this chart that has the chronic homeless numbers is of interest to us, and we'll be looking for ways to have third-party verification numbers for that data point. We'll be working on that one a bit more. And then I did want to include the data and just say a little bit about the demographic survey. We had a little bit of a divide, a bifurcation of our emphasis. The outreach teams were in what I would think of as a get-to-know-you kind of mode. So we did a demographic survey, and we asked them to consent to share information in our database. And then we had another team of people down at the shelter and Beans Cafe, and we have some information on those folks largely. We need to get to know you better approach for them. So we were implementing the VI SPDAT, the vulnerability assessment called VI SPDAT, and we didn't get as much of the demographic information. So in the next round of count, we will have a uniform data collection methodology, but for the sake of the number of volunteers we had and the resources we had available, we sort of split our approach on this one. So we only had 80 respondents on the question that I added to respond to this idea that people are moving to the community to be homeless, that they're hearing about Anchorage having services and they're moving here. So I included this table which indicates that very few people of the 80 that we were able to ask that question to, very few indicated that they had moved here in the last 30 days. And then about half of those moved here homeless. So it was 6 people of the 80 moved here in the last 12 months from another community, and then about half of those moved from out of state and half of those moved from in-state, so 3 and 3. So that's a data point that we will continue to collect, and we will continue to be interested in hearing.
So I think I've asked this to you before, Lisa, but sorry, Nancy. What efforts are there any efforts like this going on in the Valley? Are they doing these kind of counts? Because I'd be interested to see. We've got 6 people moving here. I've been wondering how many of our people are moving out to the Valley. If there's sort of a passing back and forth of individuals.
We are actually asking zip code and location of those, and I can recall at least one of those was a Wasilla person. So we will be able to provide that information. I don't know, and maybe Brian, who's here from the State Homeless Coalition, or Carrie. Do you know if there's an outreach or if there's an effort similar to this?
So Brian Wilson with the State Coalition. The Valley did not participate in this most recent count. We are making moves in the balance of state as a whole towards a coordinated entry system, which will kind of open our eyes to migration within the state, because I just met with Carmen about this. Part of the coordinated entry system isn't just within confines of Anchorage, but they're using a common database so they can actually track individuals from community to community. So our goal is by the end of the year to have Juneau, Fairbanks, and the Valley on a coordinated entry system. So by the time the next point in time count rolls around, we should actually have a better idea of
to add a little bit more to answer your question, they did not participate in the summer outreach count, but the Mat-Su Valley does participate in the annual point in time count that takes place in January. So we have those numbers, and I know specifically our youth providers work really closely because we know there's a lot of migration back and forth among homeless youth. The adults are, the data is really going to be increased in quality once we're doing coordinated entry system, because there's not kind of single providers, there's multiple providers serving adults. So that will become more in focus over the next few months.
Mr. Train?
Do we use the same data collection system in Anchorage that they use in the Valley? Or does the Valley use a different system than we use here in Anchorage?
We actually use the same thing statewide. So it's the same thing in Anchorage as in the Mat-Su, and we've recently, actually the Mat-Su Valley has been a leader in data sharing amongst the community organizations just in the Valley. We've recently, in part of our coordinated entry efforts in Anchorage and around the state, we've opened up our system to include data sharing, so we can now share within Anchorage. And part of the design work, Brian and I were discussing that this morning, is we're going to set up it in place so that we can share back and forth specifically with the Valley, but hopefully as time goes on with some of the other communities around the state. So it's the same database, it's the same data collection methods, so it will be
Done the same
comparable.
way. We have a Brother Francis shelter here, and I'm sorry, I don't know what the Valley has. Do they have something like that up there?
Not exactly. I don't know of any shelters.
The Valley mostly has transitional housing units. So I would
So
suspect.
they don't have a shelter like we've got down here by the
No,
town?
no, not at all.
Thank you.
Mr. Weddle?
So am I jumping ahead if I get into this winter shelter
Perfect.
deficit?
No, that's a great segue.
You're heading that way.
So the, having the information and feeling more confident in our numbers really does help us understand what we'll need for cold weather shelter. And in following a similar trajectory that our family system, which we'll hear a little bit more from them today, they've developed a pretty well-developed cold weather shelter plan, and it engages community resources. It breaks groups into smaller overflow shelters so that we can rely more on community expertise. And the adult system, we have been using the Brother Francis shelter and Beams Cafe. And last year we hit the limitation on some of our ability to really place all of the services on one campus. And so at the time of Bean's closure, we started thinking through the list of people who were in shelter. The age demographics are interesting to us because so many of the people are older in the shelter. We just started thinking of ways that we might break down that larger list of people accessing shelter into more manageable pieces that we can help with. And so we employed the use of a building that Anchorage Community Mental Health Services was leasing, and used that for the second half of the winter, and noticed that it really helps us focus if we can have people in smaller chunks, focus on particular needs. We tried to focus on people with more mental illness for that separate setting. And it helps the shelter do business with the rest of the folks that are in the shelter if they don't have more people with special needs. So we feel this is a way to continue going. And we are a little bit late in getting prepared for the snow to fly. You know, winter truly is coming. And so we need to make sure that we have some plans in place. We do have full engagement from Catholic Social Services leading up this cold weather shelter initiative and helping us to think through the needs of overflow because they're the place where people are going to show up. And Anchorage Community Mental Health is working with us, Downtown Soup Kitchen. We're trying to engage the partners that are doing other pieces of it to have a more comprehensive plan. This is brainstorming. This is our first draft of looking at really what the needs would be now that we know a number that we can plan for. And And so this isn't quite ready for funding proposals to partners yet, but I wanted to provide it to the committee just to know where we're heading.
Mr. Wilton?
So if your counts are roughly correct, we had 700 odd homeless people in the winter and then less in August. So where did, and the same number roughly of places for them to sleep, so where'd they go? Out there in the woods?
I'm sorry?
We had even a bigger deficit last winter.
Yes, they stayed out in the woods or right. We don't know. I mean, that's another part of what we're learning.
I'm sorry, I just don't
There
understand.
were more homeless people last year.
Last year in the winter camp?
In the winter, yes.
Oh,
And
okay,
so
also there's a different structure for overflow shelter, right? There's this very old grandfathered in clause, so that we had a single staff person, and that we were just using Beans Cafe at night, like it's an empty space. And a single staff person that could have up to 124 people. Well, in reviewing our policies, we thought, that's not safe for our staff, and that's not safe for our guests. We're not going to move forward. We can't move forward like that. And so I think but that's also a piece of this. Like there was a space that there could be more people, and even if it was unsafe, there was a space that could be.
Ms. Gray Jackson and then Mr. Croft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just looking, what is the Stolt building and the BTSK, what is that?
So the downtown soup kitchen is where the women have been going.
Okay, BTSK, and then what's the Stolt building?
That's the building at 1004 4th Avenue. It's at 4th and Juneau, and it's an engagement center that the Community Mental Health Center had been using.
Okay,
It's
it's not
another-
the former John's building, it's just a different building.
Correct, yes.
Okay,
it's a different
thank you, I
building.
appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you, and Mr. Croft. And let me remind everybody, we're having difficulty hearing in the back, so please talk unusually loud.
Okay, I'll do that. So how often was that space that could hold up to 124, I guess it means eating area, huh?
Yes.
How often was that full?
Can I ask Lisa Caldera to speak to that? I'm sorry to throw you for a loop there, but I think Lisa has the best.
Just very
Lisa's
roughly.
the director
Yeah,
of
roughly, it's about, maybe about 10 times throughout the winter. We're at capacity in both spaces, so that would be 364 on campus. But once the winter time gets ramped up, it's anywhere between 50 and 100.
50 and 100 days that it's full?
Individuals.
Individuals. So sometimes it's full, but more often, 125 is.
That used to be its capacity.
Okay, so it's in the 50 to 75% full most nights in the winter.
Yes.
And sometimes that capacity. Okay, and then I'm sorry I was slow on it. I'm really interested in the whether they came to town recently. So you're less than 12 months. 10 of the 80, so only about an eighth, right? Only about 12.5%. What was the 80? That's a subset. So who are you asking that question of? A different subset of?
Yes, those were to people that we theorized we had not engaged. Those were not our folks down in the Beans and Brother Francis campus area. That was our outreach group. And we will continue to ask that question as we go through the surveys in January. We hope to get everyone on that question.
Is your sense that it's the same answer, or you just don't know? You have a better qualitative sense of what's going on.
I hate to hypothesize. I don't know. I want to know.
And in the big picture, carrying on with Assemblyman Weddleton's, so do we feel like with that overflow, with the Beans, rough as it is, overflow, we are usually, if it's only 5 days that they hit capacity, put it this way, it's not an ideal solution, but does it seem to be a place where someone can go to get out of the cold if they want to? Do we seem to be meeting that need, even inadequately, as you expressed it, understaffed, but is it a physical space that most or all the people who need it can go?
of space, it is, although that was okay by a fire marshal quite a long time ago. So I don't know if this fire marshal now would agree that that it physically is big enough for 124 people. I wouldn't want to, I don't know.
Okay,
But
it's
in terms of a
adequacy,
space,
yeah.
in terms of staffing, no. But in
Right.
terms of a space, it's okay. But I think it's also important to remember what happened last winter, and that it is a kitchen space, and so there's challenges with that.
Yeah, I really didn't mean the adequacy of the space, but as a number of what we should shoot for. How, that is, if I made ideal 124 space, would that roughly fit what we think the need was and might be again?
Yes. However, just in terms of programming, I think one of the really strong lessons we learned is that placing too much use on the downtown campus, last year was a different year. There were all those spice calls, if you remember the end of last year. Everyone was exhausted. We were shifting people from shelter to beans and then out again to get ready for breakfast, and then we had to clean the shelter. And on that campus, tensions were so high that we believe that the numbers you're citing are what we need to plan for, but the space needs some more. We need some more space.
You're looking for a better way to house about 125 people.
Bingo. And then just to call your attention on, there's also this new housing resource. So we have these new vouchers that are out in the community that our outreach workers and case managers are really pushing on getting people out. So if we can pull 60, we just learned of 20, possibly 25 additional vouchers yesterday. We're getting closer to 100 people. We really want to pull 100 people out of the system, and then maybe we can manage with the overflow strategy that we had last year. So even these projections that we have in this memo have changed since Lisa Aquino really developed these, since we put those out. So we will keep going on trying to figure out the exact number, but this is what we're excited to be at this place, to have the numbers, to be really working with real data.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Loud Mr. Dunbar, followed by loud Mr. Wells.
So Nancy, one thing I appreciate about this memo is it includes dollar figures. And so I'm curious about how, are these dollar figures going to be built into the mayor's budget, basically? How do you expect this to go forward?
We haven't been ready to build anything into the mayor's budget as of yet. We're trying to get these more solid, and those conversations will be happening. Some of these are community dollars. Some of these may be using existing programs in a different way. And so we just quite haven't had the time to get any budget recommendations ready.
Mr. Wilton?
So when you said tensions were high, is that staff burnout or is that the residents?
Everybody, I would say. Everybody.
I mean, I think we had this summer has been a very intense summer because we had so many people. But last summer, you all know, it was a super intense summer because of space and there's a lot of deaths. And I think that, along with the job every day that people down on the campus are doing, is just very intense. And I think also to keep in mind that since the beginning of this year, we at Brother Francis Shelter have consciously staffed up quite a bit. We've staffed up greatly, and we've changed our model. We've changed to service model of trauma-informed care, really trying to think about how we can best serve our guests in that area. So we took all of this as a learning experience, and we're really trying to change. And we've done that with great support from the community, but also from Providence, Rasmussen, and lots of donors. So we're really trying.
And Mr. Chair, and I think that it's also worth reminding the committee that it was the assembly dollars that allowed for that ramp up of staffing. The assembly dollars allowed for us to do the outreach, excuse me, for the young adults this summer, the 6 a.m. group that went out. So those were that's how the resources were deployed so that we could get to this point where we can staff up and we can get better numbers. So thank you again for that investment.
Let's see, any other questions? Is that it for the cold weather shelter plan?
And we will certainly keep everyone informed as we get closer to real emergencies.
Any questions from those on the phone, Pete or Amy?
Nope.
Okay. Let's move along then to our next topic on our agenda, and that's family homelessness and the Providence Grant.
I have Sue Brogan with us today, and we'll ask maybe if we can play musical chairs a little bit over here and have Sue and Dr. Monsiger from Providence come and join us.
As long as they talk loud, they can sit anywhere they want.
Okay, great. Sue's spoken loud to me a few times, so I'm pretty sure she can do it.
Well, so thanks for the opportunity to talk a little bit. So at Providence, we've been talking a lot internally about how can we be a community partner and help on the prevention side rather than just the treatment side and through the hospital and emergency room. So last summer, we got into conversations with Sue and Michelle at United Way, and United Way made a proposal to think about working together across the different agencies that serve the homeless community in a different way, and made a financial proposal to us, which the end result is Sue will talk a little bit about what we did. But I think the important thing, and this is what I've told the United Way's board, we don't see ourselves as a key player, we don't see ourselves as an expert, but we see ourselves as an important community member and working in partnership with the city and other agencies that serve the population we're talking about today. We've been able to invest this year into the community. My hope is, and we're in conversation with United Way right now as we speak, about that we can continue to do that in a way that we can be a partner into the future.
So Nancy, do they have this in front of them? I think we're handing it out now.
I think, while you're getting this piece of paper, I think another important thing from our point of view is we tend to think of ourselves as a partner, not a funder, and that's what's been really weird for me this year, is starting that people approach us as a funder. And so our relationships with the other agencies we work with is really important to us. So the methodology we've devised has been, I think, a good exercise in a different way to work together.
So the document you have in front of you really is a reflection of work that has been going on for many years, starting with the emergency cold weather sheltering for families that has been going on. Dave Kuiper is here from Christian Health Associates, and that started as the Beyond Shelter Steering Committee and focusing on those families that were identified by Child in Transition from the school district that were sleeping, that had children sleeping in cars, unsheltered during the coldest months of the year. So United Way was able to really zero in on that as a focus area and working with our community partners. And this is a really a reflection of that. So on the left-hand side, you can see the priority funding areas. As Carmen and Nancy has talked about, the coordinated entry effort that we all have been working very intensely on. It's extremely important because the premise for the work going forward with the families is really to find those families, get to know them, get them sheltered, and then be able to support them and surround them with the supports that they need. So coordinated entry obviously is very important in that process. Client-focused navigation, that's talking about families and singles and our work with homeless youth and young adults. So this proposal and the excitement about Providence and how they're helping the community in this particular way, it's a collaborative funders approach, meaning we've really, we're zeroing in on all of those providers that are doing the great work, and hopefully with additional funding in the future, we'll be able to expand it even more, the provider picture even more. But these are all, folks that they're already working in the community. Nothing was really newly created. It's an enhancement. And so we're taking, as Nancy and Lisa have said, our best practices and move them forward. So you see in here that we've got transitional housing being funded emergency cold weather sheltering. As you go down towards the bottom, really looking at rapid rehousing to rent and utility stabilization. United Way of Anchorage, as you know, operates Alaska 211, and rent and utility assistance remains the #1 request that we get. We have been answering about 200 calls a day, and I would say 80% of those calls are folks that are looking for rent and utility assistance. So while this money here is going to be focused on a small pilot project of families and single adults, that's really going to teach us a lot about how we can move forward. And then the landlord liaison. So we're extremely excited to be part of continuing the part of the community solution to end homelessness with Mayor's Plan, NeighborWorks, the Coalition, and Providence.
Ms. Gray-Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe I missed it, but where's the money coming from?
So the money is a donation from Providence to these agencies. And it was important to us that we not be in a dictator role. We didn't want to create a bureaucratic grants process. We didn't want to create a new significant overhead. So what we asked the United Way and the agencies is, we said, we have about $1 million we think we can invest. You tell us how to invest it. And that's what this is.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Flynn.
Yeah, a couple of questions, and I'm not sure if I'm asking the right people.
Loud, Mr. Flynn.
Try. A couple of questions. First is, does anybody have a feel for, I guess we'll call it cost avoidance associated with rental and utility assistance? In other words, if we invest $100 in helping someone make their rent, how much are we saving in impacts to other services? You have a feel for that? Somebody?
Should I?
If you think you know.
I don't know that number off the top of my head, but we can go back and I can send you some research from other places. I think that there are a lot of models out there that if you're giving rent stabilization utility in particular to sort of the right, that's the wrong word, but people who in terms of self-sufficiency are in a specific place on the matrix, then that is a super successful way to keep them in housing, and there's a lot of long-term success with that. But it's important to understand about that self-sufficiency matrix and kind of where they are now that they're ready to take that on. And that is part, and in this fund for that, we are aware of that. So there's a small group of agencies who work with families, and we will be trying to look for those families who will be successful in this, and that this will really impact them best way.
I look forward to that, David.
I also
Sue, you want to add that?
I just wanted to add that as part of this plan, you'll see there are a couple of what are called transition coordinators, and the position, there will be one focusing on single adults and then one focusing on families. And that'll be the support that will be helping Lisa with the rapid rehousing component.
Mr. Weber.
I have one more.
Maybe I missed something, but.
Sorry.
Mr. Flynn was up.
I probably have one more to go. The temporary shelter, cold weather emergency shelter program is one that I have questions about, but specifically the fact that we are essentially rotating this housing on a almost daily basis is one that I think is probably less efficient than finding specific facilities that are perhaps, and I know this is staffed by volunteers, but perhaps staffed by volunteers who come to one or two facilities as opposed to moving around the city based on whoever's next in the queue. How is that going, and what analysis have we done to sort of figure out if we're doing it the best way or if there's a better way to do it?
I have opened my chair for our cold weather shelter, hopefully experts here to address that question.
And I'll be happy to step away because it's not biased.
Thanks for the question. It's not the first time the question's been asked. My name's Dave Kuiper, and I get to coordinate the churches that provide the emergency cold weather shelter for families during winter. This method of providing emergency cold weather shelter was birthed out of a shortfall in the other family shelters.
I was there.
And it's gone through a number of different iterations. But it was also part of the reasoning behind the effort of using the churches to provide the shelter was to provide a point of contact in the community, potential community for the families that would seek shelter in any one of the facilities. We started with one church that was available on a Friday night, which seemed to be the primary evening that there wasn't a place for families to go. And then we've added churches as things have gone along. There are other models. In fact, the Madison Valley has a system. They have no other family shelters except for Family Promise, which is organized around some 13 churches that each agreed to provide shelter for a homeless family for a week. And then they shift to another church for another week. It's a matter of resource in many ways. Continue to feel like the churches are willing to open their doors, make the facilities and their people available, and then we try to connect families to other resources as quickly as possible. It may not seem as efficient as one might think another system might be. It has proven to be effective, but we're always open to suggestions, and if there's another facility somehow available, we certainly might consider using a single facility.
Well, Ms. Burke, did you have a follow-up to that?
I think I just wanted to weigh in on, of course, the policy consideration is one that we've talked about a lot in the adult system, that where you add resource is an important question. So adding resource at the shelter is something that nationally everyone's moving away from. Adding resource into the affordable housing with supports is, a permanent place for that resource. So I mean, that's the question is, we know we have a couple of years where we're going to have more of this urgent need that we want to focus on, but while we push toward the permanent solution, and really keeping your eye on the permanency is what's helped other communities overcome the shelter problem. So I mean, it really is.
Yeah,
that's the question.
I guess my point was, if families know there are one or two places to go every night, even if the staffing is the volunteers, and thank you, by the way, to you and to all the volunteers who step up and do this. That's tremendous. I mean, that's giving at the core. But if there's one or two places that we can use on a regular basis, and connect them with people in the faith community, that's terrific. It seems a little simpler than saying, okay, well, this is Wednesday, so you got to go over there, and tomorrow's Thursday, so you got to go over here. I'm just trying to figure out how we leverage that tremendous generosity to the maximum benefit of the community. So that was more of a comment than a question. Sorry.
I thought that. Mr. Welton, then Mr. Cross.
Well, I maybe missed the punchline of this. Is this Providence is putting up almost $1 million to do all this stuff?
You were a little shy about that. I would have led with that, but that's great.
Well, so there's an interesting backstory here, because we want to be a community partner, but we don't want to get a lot of plaudits and stuff like this. We view our role as being a partner and a contributor and be an investor, but we don't want to be out there saying thank you so much. So anyhow, it's kind of a weird place to be.
This is very generous.
Yeah, so echoing that, took me a second to even get that. Appreciate your generosity. Also appreciate the way you did it, coordinating with the people that know so that it has the maximum benefit. and whether you were part of the specific allocation, the way it's allocated, it is weighted towards, as Nancy said, the housing solution. It provides some stopgap in the middle, and so it's weighted heavily towards coordination at the beginning and housing at the end, with less but important money in the middle to try and meet the short-term needs. I'll admit my ignorance. Can you just tell me real quickly about the 211? You described it, but so is that actually the dial of 211? I didn't ask you.
I know. Go ahead,
It's
sir.
like that irritating kid in class.
We were all that kid.
Thank you. Alaska 211 is a statewide information health and human service system that was launched in 2007. And it's got a call center that's co-located at the municipality's Emergency Operations Center. And we're open 5 days a week, but we have an app and texting and email. And so we have a lot of accessibility. Calls come in from all over the state, and resources are pulled from a database of about 3,000 different resources statewide.
So it's an I need help financial name.
I need to locate food pantry.
Right.
My mother needs transportation to a doctor's appointment. And by virtue of asking zip code, then we can drive the resource back, or get their resource connected to the community.
I just don't know how I missed that. And then how is that phone line different from the phone line that's apparently run through Awake? That is, what are the different phone lines on this?
Awake is a crisis line,
And
DV, and we're not. We're non-emergent. We're health and human service. So in here, where you see Alaska 211. It's to support the data entry and the components with coordinated entry.
And I'm not that ignorant. I'm familiar with the Wake, but I'm curious what was added under the emergency cold weather shelter that seems to be run through Wake.
Oh, I'm sorry. So what happens is during the day, families or individuals that are homeless can call 211, and we'll refer them to a shelter. But if the shelters are full, or we have a recorded message at night, if you're a family and you're homeless, then we give the Awake telephone number, so they manage the line at the evening. They then hook people up with the churches, and they also coordinate transportation, and that is one of the, there's many amazing things on this sheet, but one of them is this transportation cost to Awake, because they coordinate transportation from the families, where they are, to a church, and that's a huge, yes. Sorry.
Sir, before Sue gets off her soapbox, Sue, how many 201 centers are co-located with an emergency operations center in the country?
Just one, ours.
Isn't that cool?
Sir?
So I just want to make another comment in response to Mr. Croft, and that is that this is weighted toward rehousing and prevention, because when we started this conversation a year ago, it was, let's not put more money in, we're interested in saying, how can we be a part of something different in the future? So that you do notice it weighted heavily. There is another effort going on in the homeless world in our partnership with CSS that you probably don't know about yet because it's not quite birthed yet. And that's from the hospital's point of view, is how do we reduce the recycling through the hospital for people that need ongoing care that are in the homeless community. So this is Medicaid cost reduction, et cetera. And so we're on the verge of all three hospitals and CSS reaching a funding agreement around funding medical respite down at the shelter for people that need to be off the streets while they're getting treated.
So it's not an ambulance call and an emergency room
Right.
and all that
Yeah.
entails, when
All
it just
that.
may need something much less.
Right. And the South Central Foundation converting or creating a primary care clinic down in that part for daytime use and so on. And also, again, trying to reduce EMS usage and so on. So that, we're very, very close, and we're envisioning starting at the end of January. So that would be, in my knowledge, in my 30 years here in Anchorage, the first time all of the acute care hospitals have partnered together with a social surge agency in an upfront way. So that's the other thing I think is kind of cool.
I don't see any other questions on this topic. Just officially, I think you got the word. Thank you very much. It's very exciting to see how, through a lot of efforts, one of the cool things about this committee is that we've seen a lot of different groups come together, not because of this committee, but through the collaboration of the city, and that's what's really going to make a difference in the end. So we're very appreciative, and we're always looking for those with $1 million and that don't want to be thanked, so. Moving on, is Ron here? I didn't see him.
If he's not, I've heard it enough, I can do this.
We will, I don't see Ron, and we'll just,
Maybe we should give Mr. Boring a minute on that topic?
well, Ron's topic?
Well, in East Downtown.
Oh, well, Ron, Jamie's gonna have his own
right.
topic here in a second. We'll
All right.
let Ron speak to his plan at a future meeting.
All right.
So moving on from that, Anchorage Downtown Partnership update, Mr. Boring.
So I've got a little stack. Has this been handed out? Does everybody have one? Okay, great. So, perfect. Is there anybody in the, oh, they have binders. Okay. So the front page is 2014, 2015, 2016, and this is from the Anchorage Police Department, and this is a list of trends. Some of the ones that I've highlighted in regards to homelessness, downtown, in the downtown improvement district is burglary. It is one that is trended upwards. Camping problems is trended upwards from 2015. Disturbances have actually gone down by over a third. Problems including drinking have gone down from last year. Indecent exposure. Yes.
2016 numbers, they're partial, right?
They're partials, correct. Yep, they're through this month.
Right.
Through August, forgive me. Indecent exposure is on the uptick. That's always interesting. And then medical assist through August of this month, and people that have that are just categorized as mental person is down as well through August. One of the things that the Anchorage Downtown Partnership and Easy Park has put together is a Safety First program. And if you don't have a sticker for your business downtown, we'd be happy to provide these for you. And so what the general consensus was is that in general, people are feeling that the Anchorage Police Department has massive challenges pertaining to violent crime. And so what was happening is they just weren't reporting happenstance crime. And so Easy Park and the Anchorage Downtown Partnership have worked together to come up with a 22-hour-a-day dispatch that people can call or text non-violent, non-911 related crimes. And then there are some statistics that are also in your binder for June. We just started it in June, July, and August. Zone 2 is the one that has the most, who receives the most phone calls from people that are living and working or playing downtown. And Zone 2 is specifically the area around the Performing Arts Center, Partridge Park, et cetera. And obviously there are hot spots for panhandling and people who are sleeping on the street. This morning, staff comes on at 5 o'clock. The first thing that the maintenance supervisor does is do the rounds, and that is a health and welfare check of people that are sleeping on the street. And we counted 37 people this morning in the core, which is from C Street to L and from First Avenue to 9th. That was not the area south of C Street, or excuse me, east of C Street. Headed towards Super. That was just in the core area.
If these are just
Go ahead, Mr. Rupp.
If these are just through August, not September, October, November, December, then they're 8 of the 12. They're 2/3 of the numbers, and if we take everything up by 50%, 2016 is on a par on disturbances. That is, it's likely to end at 1,500, and a lot of these numbers come back up to the 15 levels, which are in most cases significantly higher than 14. So, I mean, it looks to me roughly that a lot of those problems went up in 15 and aren't going down in 16 if we extrapolate through the end of the year.
That's correct.
And so you feel that the police aren't responding to, or citizens have given up reporting either?
That my opinion is that the general consensus is, if I wanted to be as optimistic as possible, that people are starting to get used to their surroundings, and so they're just not calling. And I would say that even with our Easy Park statistics that we run through the Safety First program, so June we had 422 calls. July and August they dropped by over a third. And so what I think happened, in my opinion, was that people were very excited about the opportunity. Now, mind you, these are citizens that are calling when they're walking or texting, or they're walking down the street. They're calling. I believe that there was a perception of, hey, we've got a solution, and then they didn't really see anything change because the panhandlers are still there, the campers are still there, the people are still living on the streets, and so they just have stopped calling. There's some percentage that are still calling because they either own a business or they're passionate about what they're doing, but in general, I think that there's just an apathy, if you will. That's opinion. I don't have any facts to support that. Yes, sir.
Mr. Weldon.
I'm back on page 1 here. So this is a general business district is all where you're dealing with, right?
This is the downtown improvement district, that's
Right,
correct.
so what kind of thing is a child abuse neglect? What's CUST?
This is from the Anchorage Police Department, and so I don't honestly know what qualifies for each one of their codes, and I asked them to provide this for us.
Oh, I see. So this isn't necessarily downtown partnership dealing with this?
This blue sheet is 100% from the Anchorage Police Department. And we have tried to mirror the way that we do our gathering and reporting to be similar, but again, we're focused on non-911 life-threatening type calls.
Does this parallel your area here, Gamble?
It's exactly the improvement district.
Thanks.
Just for the committees, many of you may already know, but the Downtown Partnership does have a safety plan that they are proposing for downtown that they will be presenting at an upcoming Public Safety Committee meeting. But it's something certainly to be aware of and look forward to. Anything else, Jamie?
That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Homeless program areas and events to report. Vouchers, or is that the first topic?
Yes, and this is where my one slide
I was waiting for that one slide.
It's a great.
That's pretty good.
Oh, you've seen all these. This slide is the one.
And speak loudly.
We've seen this presentation before. I just wanted to go back to this slide when we think back on the initial projections we made. We thought there were probably 200 to 400 people that were part of the folks that are cycling through camp and shelter, and turns out we'll be able to get a refinement on that number. But going back to, if you recall, we grouped folks in the service system as people with high needs in the top sort of pinkish bubble. Those would be people who've been homeless longer than 1 year, which is why I called out that data point that people are reporting being homeless for a longer length of time. Then we have the middle bubble of people who are not homeless for 1 year or longer. They don't have as many cycles through homelessness. They probably need some dose, if you will, of either substance treatment or mental health treatment, but they're in the middle third of the list. And then there's the bottom, the people that we are trying to help them just reconnect to community resource, get back into possibly jobs that they were in before. And that model, the blue group at the bottom, is rapid rehousing would be the model of support we would use for them. So as we get the numbers in, this is why we're doing the vulnerability index. There's standardized assessments that tell us, certain things about a person's mental health, substance, and medical history that help us know where they sort of fit on this continuum. There are people who are outliers and they'll trend one way or the other based on other factors. But generally, you can use an assessment, you can group people into these three areas. And so the housing vouchers, that something of note that we've talked about a little bit with the families, but it's also true with the adults, that sometimes our housing resources are pointed toward one area over another. And in the adult system, the HUD housing vouchers that are out, the municipality put out about 12 vouchers using some of our home funds. the mental health center has, Anchorage Community Mental Health has some outreach vouchers. All of these vouchers at the moment are pointed toward people in this top bubble. And we don't have any structured or any federal rental assistance programs that address the middle group or below. And so this is why in the bottleneck that we see in the shelter, if you remember when we did the assessments, we noticed that it had a bell-shaped curve with most of the people in that middle group. And it's because on the top end of the service system, we have more people with more profound disabilities, but we're generally engaging them. Not fully, but we have resources and we sort of know what we're doing in that area. We need to focus on this middle group and below and start thinking of the ways that we can help stabilize those folks in community, and I would advocate not adding shelter beds, making sure people have safe shelter, but continuing to push forward toward the permanent solution. And so this is where the work we'll do over the next year with our Pay for Success program, with any of our partnerships that we try. We're trying to focus on the bottom third of the people with the van program, the work van program. They've been operating for 3 weeks. They have 3 people who've already transitioned off into permanent housing. One person actually went to treatment, and then 3 people back to work. So just to remind you that we have these different strategies. We're trying to address people at the point of what their needs are, rather than, so what sort of happened before is people come into the system and they say, well, it'll take me a while to get to that top group, and we don't want them to get there. We want to be able to pull them off at the lower levels. So right now, the rental vouchers we're working on are all primarily pointed at the top group, and we're beginning to talk about the middle group and the lower group and experimenting with the work van program for that population.
Mr. Crowe?
I noticed that somewhere in here, the pool for security deposits, that seems a brilliant idea and something that would have tripped up a lot of people getting into housing.
Absolutely.
And yet you rarely use it, but you have, what's the usage been on it? Is it declining fast, or is it just?
It actually hasn't been implemented yet.
Okay.
But what, as Sue said, and we're thinking in the adult system, is it'll go fast. I mean, the burn rate on it is really quick. We could go through it, but as Lisa was also saying, you want to make sure that you provide the right investment at the right time for the person. And so we're thinking of this cohort of people moving into vouchers. We need to make sure that they stay in vouchers, and so we're planning on wrapping around some of that additional deposit assistance, the landlord liaison, as a way to both manage the scale of the need out there. We're planning to do 2 pilots, one for adults and one for families, using those resources and some of the other programs.
And 2, maybe even 3 times this week, members of the public have pitched me on a gigantic camp idea, and I saved my concerns about it. Just give me your take on why we shouldn't take a deserted lot and make a porta potty camp for homeless.
There are 3 different reasons that I've cited around that. The first one is just morally, that's not how we understand ourselves, as just allowing people to camp in the middle of our city with needs being unaddressed. The second one is the level of disability in our population is very high, and we would be very concerned about the safety of people in that camp, and it would need to be a very conscious public resource allocation question, because we'd have to address security and we'd have to address basic needs. And then the third point would be that investment would be both high and short term. And so in terms of a policy approach, I believe it's been everyone's understanding that we're moving people to housing, that housing is really the permanent solution to our homeless issues.
Thank you.
The idea continues to come up, however.
Yes, it is. And we'll be hearing more about it, I'm pretty sure. Mr. Weldon?
that was a slow week if you only got 3 people telling that. So the van thing's been 3 weeks, so you're going to street corners, and are people giving up their lucrative panhandling to go work for $10 an hour?
Yeah.
Right.
It's been, one of the things yesterday, I believe, was or one of the days this week was one of the first days that they did just go what we're calling cold calling on the corners. Daryl Waters has been very intentional about building the program and making sure that he understands what's needed. So we started with a cohort. We've had 2 cohorts of people who are in maybe more of the edge of this blue group, yellow group, pretty ready to get to work so that we can learn what we need to know. And then the next phase of this will be the just approaching people in the street. Hey, why don't you come work with a program that we know works and is structured.
So when he goes to the street corner, he pulls up to Northern Lights in Minnesota, and there's 6 people there, and he says, "Hey, you guys want to work?" They all say, "Yeah, great," jump in the van, or?
I don't know how that, I mean, like I said, he just did that the first time he said he engaged people this week. But the way that's structured right now is he is going out to all of those corners and saying to people, "Hey, would you like to work? We're going to do a pickup at Downtown Soup Kitchen on such and such day. You can come and be with us," or "We're going to do a pickup at Beans," to provide a way to do a little bit of screening in advance. We need to make sure that people are steady on their feet until he learns how to do that cold engagement and know, in terms of his liability and his insurance, that he has people that are ready to go and work. I think the next thing that we would think about is some kind of a day program area where we could just go do that cold call, bring people to the day program area and do a little bit more assessment with them to see if they are ready to go out and work from there. We might add another step in there to make sure that everybody's safe.
Gotcha, thanks.
And by municipal code, Mr. Webb said he had to pull to the parking lot and go approach them on foot. He couldn't pull up to the curb.
Correct. Or he would get the ticket.
Just as an interesting note on that, the day we did the count, we came across Daryl and his group of people working. They were cleaning the corner of Minnesota and Northern Lights. While they didn't have the normal set of panhandlers working with them, the normal set of panhandlers left the area while this group cleaned it up, and it looked great after they're done. And I don't know this recent statistics, but they've also picked up thousands of pounds of garbage in various areas around the city. So there is that benefit too going on with that program. Next.
Okay, so we have wanted to make sure to give you the van update, and then I've asked Allison Kerr from Covenant House if she might just give us an update on some youth homeless activities that are happening.
So we have great news today because on Friday, Covenant House is doubling the number of beds that are available for long-term housing solution for young people. So it's a partnership with Cook Inlet Tribal Council. It's called the Nina House. It's on the corner of, I would say, point of reference, Holy Family or Glacier Brew House. It's right there, that building. And from 4 to 6, we're doing an open house. So I want to invite everybody there. One of the things is we look at just the demographics of our young people and really being a part of ending teen homelessness. One of the things that we looked at in our FY16 number, so it's last year that we just completed, 47% of our kids stayed in shelter for 30 days or less. Of that 47%, 78% returned within 2 weeks. So if you think about that, when you look at 2% of our population was served in transitional housing, 0% of youth that have stayed with us 8 months or longer have ever returned for housing. So it's really what Nancy is saying, the stats are, is you really do have to look at ways to engage long-term and offer that kind of housing solution. So Friday we have that available. And then I just wanted to update you on the role of Covenant House and the Providence partnership. Is Covenant House is being the lead agency to do a youth coordinated entry process. So we have a consultant coming up. Anybody who likes all-day meetings, on the 29th and the 30th, you're welcome to join us over at Covenant House, because what we will be doing as a community is looking at solutions for where our gaps are, what's going on, and how we can create basically a safety net for young people, and a process in which they can make one phone call and they know the resources, and we know how to direct them for the resources. So that's the 29th and the 30th. Everyone's welcome. And this is a part of, just so as you guys can kind of keep this in your mindset, HUD has just issued kind of a challenge to 10 communities across the U.S. They are going to do a demonstration project in which they're asking communities to come up with a solution to end teen homelessness, and that's their priority. So I assure you that Anchorage will be submitting for that. And last week we had about 40 different organizations in a conversation about what is it going to take for us as a community to really wrap our hands around ending teen homelessness. And so that application is due November the 30th, so I'll keep giving you updates as we go through the process, and let you know what we're trying to do as a part of it to be in that mix. And what that could potentially do is bring about $2 million into our community from HUD to end teen homelessness.
Yeah, real briefly, so double from what to what? Double your capacity from what?
Yeah, so in that space we had 14 beds over there, and it's going to be 30.
And you confused me on the statistics, but essentially, if you provide a short-term solution, they come back.
They come
and
back.
If you provide a long-term, they almost
don't.
never do.
Yeah. So if, as an organization, we're intentional to end it, then we've got to continue to do things that engage people and change us from our space being what would considered emergency housing to more like tier 1 housing. So you're either here to go to there, as opposed to looking at a plan in the past where we might do is, how can we get you a job today? Well, we realize a job today is really a bit short-sighted if really this person needs to be engaged in education and employment. And so giving us the opportunity to work longer with a young person is giving us better outcomes.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Allison. Appreciate it. Anything else?
Just in summary, we've had updates today from the adult homeless system, the family homeless system, the youth homeless systems doing their work, and all of this work is uniting under the HUD coordinated entry, and basically that's a requirement of HUD and compelling us as a community to make sure that we are monitoring how the people flow through the system and by the person, not just in terms of programs and looking at activities that we do. So these groups are working, Providence is supporting the work of all of them because they're great partners and excellent community minded people, but also because it's going to reduce the bad outcomes that people have going through their emergency department. And it makes fiscal sense, it makes community sense, and so these processes will continue throughout the next year as we become that official coordinated entry community that our HUD application requires us to be. So that's our story.
Thank you very much. That's the end of our official agenda. It's time for any member comments before we open it up to others. Don't see any. It's time for audience participation. I did get an email from Mr. Davidge asking to be able to speak, so you get to move to the top of the queue if you want to, or we'll get you on the agenda for a presentation. Okay, thank you. Anyone else in our vast audience wish to share anything? Yes, I see a hand put out a body.
Yes, I'm Victoria Beckler-Lewis. I hear a lot of concern about activities and all these programs that we have in place and are actively working with, but I don't hear a lot of discussion on the economic impact of our city except for the comments earlier from the person I couldn't see regarding the applicants, people in various businesses that are no longer participating in reporting. I am a part of 3 businesses here in the Anchorage area, and our problems are getting worse, not better. And I think it needs to be stated that we have customers that are afraid to come in and out of our businesses. We have staff members afraid to come in and out of our businesses. We have landlords that are doing everything they can to assist us. And we're going backwards. So I would like to hear more discussion on what proactive things we can do as business owners to resolve these issues immediately. I mean, we're talking about a downturn economy, and yet we cannot control the issues that keep our customers out of our businesses. There have been times I don't even want to walk into Penny's. 8 o'clock at night is not a pretty time to be there. And so that's what I would like to see some focus on. I have been a part of many social service positions in the last 30 years, dating back to Anchorage in the 70s and statewide. And I am an advocate of all the things we're discussing, but I'm not seeing the day-to-day front line that we need to address. I'd like to hear more on that.
Thank you for that. One thing to keep in mind, I think some of the issues that you are concerned about, certainly you're not the only one that has mentioned that, especially lately. Some of those issues are also addressed at our Public Safety Committee, especially the issues of people not being safe, not doing things, as opposed to the Homeless Committee. Sometimes those committees come together, but your point is well taken, and I think you will be seeing more of that in one form or the other. So thank you for that. Any other comments, questions from the audience? Seeing none, I have a couple of, Nancy?
Well, I just wanted to remind about the next meeting.
Yeah, that's what I've got my list of announcements that Amanda has carefully crafted for me that I can't read. Remember, we do appreciate you coming to this meeting. We value you being here. If you're not on our list already to get announcements for our meetings, please give your email address to Amanda there, who's raising her hand in the middle of the room, and she'll put you on our list, and we'll notify you when we have our next meeting, and hopefully you can join us. Our next meeting is actually a joint meeting of the Public Safety Committee and the Homeless Committee on October 5th. And that is to accommodate some folks that from out of town that are going to be here talking about an issue for this committee, and they're here that week, so we've kind of co-opted the Public Safety Committee's date, and we're going to have a joint committee of both of those, and that's again October 5th. I believe it's at the same time as this. That's a Wednesday, is it?
11:30.
11:30 to 1, okay, on October 5th. And last but certainly not least, there is pizza in the other room. If you have not helped yourself yet, it's open to the public. Feel free to grab it. And if there are no other comments or concerns, we are adjourned. Thank you.